Paul George let Lillard hear about it. Then Dame was like, y'all must have forgot. I sent you both home, then you teamed up with Kawhi as well. Take a listen to this.
Asking me about Patrick Beverley, who I sent him home before at the end of a game. Paul George just got sent home by me last year in the playoffs. So they know that the reason they reacting like that is because of what they expect from me, which is a sign of respect. And it just shows what I've done at a high clip more times than not. So I'm not offended by it. If anything, it should just tell you how much it hurt them to go through what I put them through in those situations previously.
The chirping continued via Instagram with Paul George posting, and you're getting sent home this year. Pat Beverley adding, Cancun on 3. Dame followed up with, keep switching teams, running from the grind. You boys is chumps. On that note, we bring in NBA champion Kendrick Perkins. Max is loving all of it. Stephen A., talk to me. Who's under more pressure? Is it PG, or would you say it's Dame?
Oh, it's definitely Paul George. Make no mistake about it. And let me say this, okay? Paul George is a star, and Patrick Beverley is one of my favorite players and favorite people in the world. Don't mess with Dame. Don't mess with Dame Dollar. He's not the one. He's not the one. This brother, on many, many occasions, has stepped up in big moments, and he has closed. This brother has carried this Portland Trailblazers franchise and has been the face of the franchise. And, oh, by the way, you know, not only is he getting paid, not only is he a star averaging better than 25, 26, sometimes 27 to 28 a game, this is also a guy that doesn't get enough credit for his community service, his philanthropy, the fact that he is a guy that is socially conscious, never gets in any kind of trouble or whatever. This dude is worthy of being the face of a franchise. And by the way, Max, you know his rap game. Come on now. The brother's special, all right, in a multitude of ways. Having said all of that, none of that is the reason why Paul George is under more pressure. Paul George is under more pressure because, A, Paul George hasn't been out of the first round since 2014. I don't think anybody remembers. He hasn't been out of the first round since 2014. Now, obviously, he had that nasty injury in the summer games or what have you. He had to come back from that. But the last couple of years in Indiana, the last couple of years in OKC, before he arrived with the Clippers, he ain't been out of the first round. Then now you have a situation where he's that other star, the secondary star on the Los Angeles Clippers, a team that's widely favored to win the championship. And we all know that if Paul George does the kind of things that he's capable of doing, the Clippers should win the chip. We all know this. And so when you have those kind of expectations on your plate, but you haven't been out of the first round in 6 years, and Dame Dollar is fresh off a trip to the conference finals, all right, we kind of look at Paul George and say, in terms of the specific question, who's under the most pressure? I know Dame's getting his money, $250 million and all of this other stuff. I get all of that. But the brother's the face of the franchise. He's carried them on his shoulders for years. He's fresh off a trip to the conference finals, and he doesn't have the expectations this year that Paul George and the Clippers have. And I definitely think because of it, Paul George is under more pressure than him.
Damian Lillard is under more pressure. They're both under a lot of pressure. But Damian Lillard is clearly under more. First of all, keep running from the grind. Like, Lillard is everything you want in a franchise player. Staying up in Portland saying, no, I'm not going to join anyone. I'm going to do it right here. And what did we say back then? Stephen A., oh, he should go here, he should go there. Really, two things had to happen because he was playing in Portland. One, Nurkic had to continue to improve. His trajectory had to take him past just a useful big into, like, a really good player. And it is looking like that has happened. He's, like, picked up where he left off, and he's trending in the right direction. And then the other thing is he needed another guy, not just CJ, another guy who he could rely on. And it looks like he's gotten that in Carmelo. He's got the things that we thought he needed if he was going to stay. Stephen A., to quote another rapper you may have heard of, in terms of Paul George going at Damian Lillard, don't bark up that tree. That tree will fall on you. I don't know why your advisors ain't forewarned you. Do not play with Damian Lillard. He's not the one, and we all smelled it on him from the beginning. That's why any failures he ever had in the playoffs are like, we didn't think Damian Lillard was that cat. We thought he was that dude to come up big. And that's the point. He has raised his already formidable game to MVP levels right now. He is putting on a show in winning efforts. Lillard is special, and he's showing it. Sometimes a guy who does not have the same overall game, like on defense or whatever, can elevate his game to an extent that it surpasses a much more well-rounded guy, like a Paul George. That's what Damian Lillard has done. He is the man on his team. He has the things we thought he needed, and the attention is squarely on him. Paul George, as great as he is second fiddle on his team. The pressure is more on Damian Lillard.
Max. Man, why do every time I come on here, you are so wrong, man. It's no pressure on Damian Lillard. How is it pressure on Dame Lillard? He's been playing this whole season with a team that's been injured, without Nurkic, without Zach Collins, and he's still keeping the Portland Trailblazers relevant. He's arguably having one of the best seasons of his career. He's arguably in the top 5 conversation, might be one of the best point guards in the NBA. He's the second best scorer in the league in today's game. Max, he's the most clutch guy probably in today's game if you want to talk about clutch, to your point. But no, it's not, man. There's not any pressure on Dame Dollar this year. He played with an injured roster. He wasn't even supposed to be here. He's fighting for the 8th spot. The pressure is on Paul George, right? You got the Clippers picked to win the championship, don't you? The reason that you have them picked to win the championship is 1, because of Kawhi Leonard, and 2, because of Paul George. We're talking about arguably one of the top 5 duos in the league. And I'm going back to Stephen A. Smith when he said the first part of it, Paul George has a history of disappearing in the playoffs. Now, I can recall last year when Dame Dollar sent him home. Yes, I know he was battling with injuries, but think about the year before that against the Utah Jazz when he was with Oklahoma City, and Russell Westbrook in the crucial closeout game goes in there and drops 46 points. And what do Paul George do? He delivered 5 points on 2 of 16 shooting. The pressure is on Paul George. The Clippers are championship or bust. We know what we're going to get out of Kawhi Leonard Jordan, but we don't know what we're going to get out of Paul George. So the pressure is on Paul George, your team, your pick that you got to win the championship. That's who the pressure is on, not Damian Lillard.
I appreciate the point that you both hit on, which I think is true. Paul George has to rise to the occasion. And right now, insofar as he has a reputation that way, not set in stone, but it's like, we've seen the opposite happen. And insofar as Lillard has a reputation, it's that he's played bigger. That's a true point. They both have pressure on them. And if you want to argue also what you both did, the Clippers' expectations are higher. I agree with that, too. But that's not just because of Paul George. It's primarily because of Kawhi, then Paul George, and then the fact that this team already last year, the majority of which is still together, won 48 games, and they have a great coach, right? That's why the pressure's on everyone on the Clippers. Paul George secondarily behind Kawhi. But Damian Lillard is the man. People are expecting them to make the playoffs. And by the way, if I asked you guys right now, are the Blazers live against the Lakers in the first round if they make the playoffs? You're both going to tell me yes. Don't tell me the pressure's not on Lillard.
Well, first of all, if you're going to disagree with us, don't spend 2 minutes agreeing with us before you get to your point, because that deflates your argument, number one. Number two, and more importantly, I'm just telling you, number two, and more importantly, when you talk about Kawhi Leonard, I'm going to tell you why there's more pressure on Paul George. And by the way, Kendrick, I didn't say that Paul George, quote-unquote, disappears in the postseason. Last 4 years, he's averaged 28 twice, 27 another time, 24 another time. So I'm not going to say he disappears, but all I'm saying to you is this. In the end, Max, when you talk about Paul George, you bring up Kawhi Leonard. Here's what you miss. The fact that Kawhi Leonard was in Toronto and won the title with Pascal Siakam and Kyle Lowry and Fred